Oh, hey, first graders. My name is John the Donut. Today, you're going to be learning about problem and solution. And you're going to read a story about my friend, Arnie. He's also a donut. So pay attention and let's figure out what his problem was and how he solved it. See you later. Bye.
The weirdest thing just happened. I swear I heard a donut talking. Am I going crazy? I might be. All right, today for reading, we're going to be reading about Arnie the Donut. It's a pretty funny story. And our focus today is going to be problem solution. So before we read our story, let's practice. Problem and solution. A problem is something a character wants to change, fix, or figure out. The solution is the way the problem is fixed or solved. So for example, here you see spilt milk, and the solution is to grab a paper towel and clean it up. Now in stories, sometimes we have several problems and several solutions. Let's look at some examples. Problem. A girl is outside and it starts to rain. There are different ways she can solve this problem. She can go inside, grab an umbrella, and then come back outside. Or she can just go inside and wait for it to stop raining. Or she can go outside and just play in the rain. Problem. A child has missed the school bus. Well, if the school is close by, he could walk to school with an adult, or he can ask an adult to drive him to school. Okay, we're going to do one more thing before we dive into our story. We're going to very quickly read this short story, The Lion and the Mouse. It's a story that I'm sure many of you have already heard, and then we're going to talk about the problem and solution in the story. The Lion and the Mouse. One day, Tiny Mouse woke Lion up. Lion was cross. He caught Mouse and was about to eat him. Ah! Mouse squeaked, "Don't eat me! I might be able to help you one day." "How can a tiny mouse help me?" laughed Lion. But he let Mouse go. Soon after, Lion got stuck in a hunter's net. Days passed and Lion got weaker. Then Mouse squeaked, "Can I help you, Lion?" "I'm stuck," cried Lion. Mouse nibbled and nibbled until Lion was free. "Thank you, Mouse," purred Lion. Okay, so in this story, there are actually two problems. The first problem is that Mouse got caught by the lion, and the lion was about to eat the mouse. What did the mouse do to solve his problem? Yes, he said, "Don't eat me, I could help you one day." The second problem was that Lion got stuck in a hunter's net. How was this problem solved? The mouse nibbled and nibbled until Lion was free. That's how that problem was solved. Now it's time to read our story. Now we're going to read about Arnie the Donut. What do you think the problem might be in this story? Let's read to find out. Arnie the Donut, cooked up by Lori Keller. Arnie turned out to be just the kind of donut he had hoped to be. Chocolate covered with bright colored candy sprinkles. Look at all my sprinkles. There must be 1,000,000 of them. Actually, there are 135, but I'm not going to spoil it for him. He was made very early in the morning at the downtown bakery, home of the best donut around. Arnie was proud to be one of the best. He knew that people all over town made special trips to his bakery to buy donuts of their own. As Ernie sat on the tray, which had just been placed in the donut case, he took a moment to reflect on the amazing things that had happened to him that morning. First, he was cut into a ring. Then he was deep fried. I'm cooking in boiling grease, but I love it. Then he was cooled. Then he was iced. That's where they put the icing on him. Then he was sprinkled, and then he was named Arnie. Arnie looked around and saw all sorts of donuts sitting nearby. Cinnamon twist, jelly filled. It's not brain, silly, it's jelly. chocolate zebra, long john, eclair. He tried to strike up a conversation with an apple fritter on the next tray over, but she didn't seem to want to talk. It is rather early. Maybe she's not a morning donut, Arnie supposed. It was 6 a.m., and the baker had just hung the open sign in the window. Arnie was fascinated as he watched customers stream into the bakery. One by one, donuts were chosen, placed in paper bags, and whisked away with their new owners. Some went by the dozen in giant boxes. "Goodbye," Arnie yelled to each donut. "Have a great trip." "This is so exciting. I wonder who will choose me." Just then, Arnie looked up and saw a man pointing at him. "Moi?" Before he could say another word, he was pulled from the tray and placed in a paper bag of his very own. "Thank you, Mr. Bing. Have a nice day," Arnie heard the baker say to the man. "Mr. Bing, that's a fine name," Arnie decided. "I can hardly wait to meet him." The ride to Mr. Bing's apartment was a little bumpy. Arnie was grateful for the soft napkin the baker had so thoughtfully placed underneath him in the bag. He had never ridden in a car, and he wished he could look out the window to see all the sights. But more than anything, he wished he could meet Mr. Bing. "Why does he keep me in this bag?" he wondered. Finally, the car came to a stop, and they were home. Mr. Bing carefully removed Arnie from his paper bag and placed him on a clean, shiny plate. "What a handsome plate," Arnie said to himself. "I'm not crazy about the design. I prefer a more modern look, but it's nothing a little paint can't fix." Mr. Bing gently lifted Arnie from his plate. "Isn't that cute?" thought Arnie as he closed his eyes and smiled. "He wants to hold me." As Arnie relaxed in Mr. Bing's hand, he felt something moving higher and higher away from his plate. When he opened his eyes to see where he was going, he discovered that he was headed straight for Mr. Bing's open mouth. Okay, let's look at his eyes. He looks pretty shocked, huh? He had no idea that he was going to be eaten, and he is terrified. "What are you doing?" shouted Arnie. Mr. Bing was stunned. He dropped Arnie back into this plate. I was going to eat you," he replied in shock. "Eat me?" Arnie shrieked, his sprinkles flying everywhere. "Why would you do a thing like that? Do you make a habit of eating all of your house guests?" "No, of course not." "So why then did it suddenly occur to you to eat me?" Arnie demanded. "Well, because you're a donut. That's what donuts are for, to eat." "Do you mean to tell me you've done this before?" "Yes, I eat a donut every day," Mr. Bing said sheepishly. Arnie froze. He felt sick and frightened and angry. He thought to himself for a moment, I'm I must put a stop to this right away. I'll call the bakery and warn the others, who's ever left, that is." Arnie knew that there was no time to waste and that he needed to be very sneaky in order to keep his plan from Mr. Bing. He turned to Mr. Bing and said in the sweetest voice, "Excuse me, sir, but I don't believe we've been properly introduced. My name is Arnie." Hello, Arnie," Mr. Bing stammered. "I'm Mr. Bing. It's nice to eat you. Meet you." "Mr. Bing, would you be a dear and allow me to use your phone?" Arnie asked extra politely. "Oh, well, okay," said Mr. Bing, and he handed Arnie the phone. As quickly as he could, Arnie dialed the number of the bakery. The baker answered the phone. "Downtown Bakery, home of the best." "Mr. Bakerman," Arnie frantically whispered, "this is Arnie the Donut. Do you remember me? You made me at 5:15 this morning, and I was bought about 20 minutes ago by a man that goes by the name of Mr. Bing." Yes, Arnie," the baker answered. "What can I do for you?" "Now, I don't want to alarm you, but just moments ago, that man tried to eat me. And not only that, he claims to have eaten hundreds of us. I'm going to make a run for it, but I wanted to warn you so that if you see him coming to the bakery again, you can stop him." Oh, oh my, Arnie, I thought you understood. That's why I make donuts, for people to eat." "I can't believe it," Arnie gasped. "Are the other donuts aware of this arrangement?" "Well, I think so," the baker man said. Let me ask them to make sure." The baker yelled to the other donuts. Do you donuts know that you're going to be eaten? Yes, we know, the donuts shouted back. We're delicious. Did you hear that, Arnie? The baker asked. Arnie was crushed. The phone dropped from his hand. He heard all he needed to hear. Arnie forgot all about his plan to escape. He collapsed back onto the plate, glanced up at Mr. Bing and muttered, all right then, let's get this over with. Go ahead and eat me. All right, guys, do you think that this man is going to eat him? Let's find out. Mr. Bean gazed down at Arnie. I'm not going to eat you, Arnie, he said reassuringly. I just wouldn't feel right about it now. Really? Arnie said with a huge sigh of relief. Well, I'm glad to see that you've come to your senses. But since I'm not going to eat you, Mr. Bean continued, I'll have to figure out something else to do with you. I paid good money for you. I don't want to be wasteful. Of course not, Arnie agreed. What we need to do is each make a list of things I can do with you instead of eating you. Between the two of us, I know we'll come up with something. Good plan, Mr. Bing, Arnie said. This will be a breeze. I bet I'm good at lots of stuff. They both feverishly wrote down their ideas. When they were finished, Mr. Bing asked, would you like to read yours first? Sure thing, Mr. Bing, Arnie answered. What do you think a donut might be good at? Things Mr. Bing can do with me instead of eating me. Do you need a ballroom dance partner? No, I don't dance. You could use a personal fitness trainer. I'd get too sweaty. How about a portrait painter? Oh, heavens no. Would you like me to entertain at your parties? I don't like throwing parties. I could be your chauffeur, but you can't see over the steering wheel. I'd make a great bodyguard. Who could you protect me from? A cookie? All righty, Mr. Bean, let's hear what you came up with. Okie dokie, he replied. I just don't know you'll like some of these. Things I can do with Arnie instead of eating him. I could use you as a pincushion. Ouch! Oh, too painful. How about an air freshener for my car? How about not? Would you like to be a picture frame? I don't imagine so. I need a new bowling ball. Well, don't look at me. You'd make a fine paperweight. Boring. Then what about a doorstop? Try again. But there was nothing else on Mr. Bing's list. They were both completely out of ideas. Arnie and Mr. Bing were exhausted. They felt terribly disappointed. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Mr. Bing finally spoke. I'm sorry, Arnie, but it's clear that we can't agree on anything for you to do around here. This is difficult for me to say, but I think it would be best if you found another home. I know, said Arnie, fighting back tears. I'll just be on my way then. Is it all right if I keep this napkin to pack up all my loose sprinkles? Of course, Mr. Bing replied sadly. As soon as I get a job, I'll pay you back the money you spent on me. That's not necessary, Arnie. Arnie shook Mr. Bing's hand and thanked him for his kindness. Mr. Bing opened the door, and as Arnie left, he paused and said, I guess donuts really are only good for eating, aren't they? They both waved goodbye, and Arnie was gone. Mr. Bing stood at the window and watched as Arnie walked away. He walked past the flower beds, the mailboxes, and the apartment manager's office. He passed the tennis court, the swimming pool, and the clubhouse. But when Arnie reached the no dogs allowed sign at the end of the driveway, Mr. Bing suddenly came up with a new idea. Arnie, wait up, yelled Mr. Bing as he ran after him. Arnie turned back and stopped. When Mr. Bing caught up with him, he was out of breath. I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier, Mr. Bing panted. Arnie, I've always wanted a dog and could never have one because there's no dogs allowed here. But there's no sign that says no donuts allowed. Arnie perked up when he realized what Mr. Bing was thinking. Would you like to take walks and play fetch? Mr. Bing asked excitedly. You bet I would. Can you do tricks like rolling over? Rolling over? Look at me. I was made for rolling over. Well then, there's only one thing left to ask. Arnie, will you be my donut dog? Oh, Mr. Bing, I would love to be your donut dog. From that moment on, Arnie and Mr. Bing were inseparable. Arnie liked being a donut dog even better than he liked being a donut. He went through a short phase of chewing on furniture and barking at the mailman, but after a crash course in obedience school, he graduated first in his class. Everywhere the two of them went, people would stop to pet Arnie. No one had ever seen a donut dog before. Arnie and Mr. Bing had so much fun together. Arnie was the best pet Mr. Bing could have ever hoped for, and Mr. Bing was Arnie's best friend. Isn't that a great story? It makes me want to eat a donut. And guess what? I have one.
Hey!
Did you hear that?
Hey!
Are you talking to me?
Don't eat me!
Oh man, I really wanted a donut.
I don't want you to eat me!
Perhaps we could come up with our own solution.